Hi, Misha here, and hopefully you saw my recent interview with Dave Wagner. By the way, my speech always says Wagner with his name, of JDI and Imports, talking about the big May batch of Swiss SiG Sauer A.G guns, probably the largest single batch of Swiss 55x guns to ever get imported, and potentially to ever be imported if things go south with old Chippy. But at any rate, that was an interview video about the background of the company, how we got into it. And in this video, I want to talk about the guns that came in with this batch, specifically focusing on kind of the rarer variants and options, configurations. Just to start out, I have 3 of mine here, kind of representing the basic size classes. On the top, we have an older PE90 from the 80s. Then we have my 5.51 LB that you see a lot because, as I've said, I like shooting it. And on the bottom, just because it was the closest to hand to represent the little ones, I brought out the SG55x SB. So these are the different classes. What are the distinguishing features? SiG 5.50. Held open. The PE90 is the Swiss civilian semi-automatic version of the Sturmgewehr 90, SGW 90. That has been Switzerland's standard issue rifle since the 80s. It has the longest or full-length gas system with piston, handguard. Most have the bipod, although it's quick detachable. They will all have rifle-length barrels, either 20.7 or 20.8 inches, with integrated flash hiders. Most you'll find will be in gray-green, and most you'll find will be diopter sights with the QD top for rail. And most of these will have the traditional buttstock. This is the early so-called whale-tailed stock. Later ones might have a green stock more like this. This is the SG55x, so the original. And going back, just to give a very brief history, SiG started working on a .223 caliber gun really in the 60s. This evolved into the 540 of the 70s, which was actually produced in limited numbers in France by Manurhin. And they would update it to become the 541 for Swiss trials against an entry from Bern. And it was selected in 1983 and essentially intended to go straight into production. But budgetary delays gave SiG time to further refine the design, introducing the 5.50 starting in 1984 with the first initial kind of test deliveries and small batch deliveries in 86. Again, budget constraints, not just to do with the gun, but the new 5.6 GP90 ammo meant that it wasn't officially adopted until 1990, although by this point several were in the hands. And deliveries would continue all the way up through 1998. And even though they don't order new ones today, SiG Sauer, first SiG, then SAN, now SiG Sauer A.G. Same building, same machines. They still refurbish these for the Army, giving, say, new furniture. Buttstocks break, bipods get lost. And these are expected to be in service for quite some time to come. Moving on. SiG 5.51. the SG55x. Interestingly, this was never really used by the Swiss Army or even Air Force, but it was adopted, at least nominally. Back when they ordered trials, they wanted both a full-length rifle and a so-called headquarters or command staff carbine. And this is the LB variant with a 17.8-inch barrel, so a similar profile to this. But the original version was the short barrel, although it was just called the 5.51. It had a 14.3-inch barrel, so very similar to our M14, except the flash hider is counted as part of the barrel, so really it's more like 12.5 inches. So it just comes out to here. No bipod, and of course originally it would have been gray and green for trials, and it was accepted. The prototype was known as the 543, eventually being updated to the 5.51. It was accepted as the Sturmgewehr 90 Kurs, STGW 90K. Even though it passed trials and was accepted, they never purchased them because, again, budgetary constraints of the post-Cold War period. They figured that the standard rifle would do. But SIG had the design, and so they started kind of marketing this to other customers. A few Swiss police did purchase the 5.51, either SB or LB later, but it really achieved some good success overseas, including in America with Louisiana Wildlife, Fish, and Game. And of course it was adopted in France to some degree by special forces and has actually seen quite a bit of use in South America. So even though the 5.51 style, the carbine length gas system, that's what that means. You notice it's a shorter handguard. Same operating system. It was a success and has been produced and is, as I've always said, my favorite. But since it wasn't a Swiss military, that's why I set this one up as what I call a NATO carbine, NATO magwell, and NATO bayonet lug. And for the first decade, these were the two. 5.50 rifle, 5.51 carbine. But now with the 5.53. 5.53 LB with GP90. Safety is on. In 1998, SIG would introduce the SG55x Commando. This was the first subcompact with a very short gas system, an 8.9-inch threaded barrel, and was the first time we had a removable muzzle device. This is a Rotex on this one, Rotex 5. And as we've shown in previous videos, the original 5.52 uses more of an AK recoil system because of the spring technology, or rather lack thereof, that SIG had in the late 90s. So this is a bit of an outlier. This would also be when the LB-SB thing came about. They would originally introduce this with the short barrel, but soon they would introduce an LB version with an integrated flash hider, so it had this kind of front end. And it was about 13.6 and could mount a bayonet and a rifle grenade. And the Swiss military did adopt the 5.52. They adopted the LB as the STGW 04, kind of using it as a, well, kind of a command level carbine. And they also adopted the SB as the SGGW 04K, more for special forces use. But as we pointed out in previous videos, the 5.52, while a good gun, had some things that weren't good about it and didn't meet SIG's standards. But SIG sold off its firearms division. That got reorganized into Swiss Arms Neuhausen, and when they came about, they reworked the 5.52, introducing the 5.53 between 2007 and 2008, and that really improved the design. And the 5.53 is really what has taken off in the 21st century being adopted is the SGW07 and 07K in Switzerland, and has seen a lot of export success with other countries. And it's again the short, so that kind of gives you an idea. 0 equals rifle, 1 equals carbine gas, and 2 and 3 equal, you can call it submachine gun or sub-carbine length gas system. And of course, since this is a pistol, that's why it's got a brace on it. So that kind of gives you a brief rundown of the different categories. And with that, let's look at some of the guns, some of the rare variants, and just kind of what's going on with this recent batch from San Imports John Doe Investigations. With that, we'll kind of begin here. Let's begin with the original rifle. And one of the most common questions that's been asked online and in person in recent times. What's the difference between the SG55x and the PE90? Well, really nothing except the name, which is in some ways everything. On the bottom, with the 30 round mag, we have the 5.50. On the top, with the 20 round mag, we have the PE90. Externally, they look identical. Green, gray, bipod, full-length gas, steel lower, what have you. Even diopter sights. Both even have a Swiss spec bayonet lug, which is great. Both have the grenade ring. There's only one small difference externally. The PE90 has a 20.7, give or take, inch barrel. The 5.50 has a 20.8 inch barrel. At least these two do. The difference inside the muzzle device here is just tapered and smooth. Inside the device here, it's slightly extended and has threads for a blank fire device. Now, this wasn't cut off of the of the PE90. It just never had them. Because you can tell it has a lip on the edge. Same shape lip here. It's just different contracts, different times. Originally, the SGGW90 and PE90 did not have the internal threads, but more recent contracts, this is a Hammerly barrel, seem to. So in Switzerland, the Select Fire, standard military Army issue version, is called the SGGW90. And the semi-automatic only civilian version in Switzerland is called the PE90. But for export, SIG, sans SIG, designates this the SG550. And this is common. If you go back to the days of the 1950s and 60s, the STGW57 was the military designation, PE57 was the Swiss civilian designation, and SG510 was the export designation. And they continued this on with the 550. So there are export Select Fire 550s, as well as the 1980s 550 SPs, and today's 550P. But up until recent times, PE90s were pretty much Swiss only, with a handful in the USA. And that's because in the 80s, the 550 was approved for import. And in more recent times, the 550P name was approved for import, complete with a 20-some-odd inch barrel. But the PE90 was not submitted for approval until just the last couple of years by JDI Sand Imports. So even though the difference is the name, it matters a lot because you can't import a gun if the name on the side is wrong. That's why they all came in originally as 550s. And these have a JDI serial number, JDI 550, what have you. But what's kind of neat about the PE90s, they continue the serial range used in Switzerland for their civilians. So 32, whatever. So it's in the same serial range as its European cousins. But other than the serial number and the different barrel model, which is not 100%, I've seen different guns with different barrels. They kind of just pick whichever 20-point whatever barrel they have. They're the same, including diopter sights, full-length gas, 2-position regulator. And steel lower. The only other difference of how we receive these, the PE90s come with a more traditional 20-round mag, which was the standard Swiss issue mag. Still is today for conscripts, citizen soldiers. And the 550 comes with the more modern 30-round mag, which is usually for export guns as well as professional or special forces type soldiers. So that's one other difference, 20 versus 30. Both have the upswept cocking handle. Both can be fitted with a scope mount on top. There's a hole here, and then a dovetail where the Swiss crest is. Both have the same loop, sling swivels, all that. Now it's worth pointing out that between 1986 and 1998, the Swiss government ordered hundreds of thousands of these. But once they had enough, they really quit ordering they quit ordering the nearly 21-inch barrel version. But around the same time, they started ordering short versions, both with an 8.9-inch and a 13.6-inch barrel, later known as SB and LB. Initially, these would be the 5.52, the SGGW04, and then later it would be improved around 2008, becoming the SG553, the SGW07. So in modern times, the factory in Switzerland really doesn't make many full-size rifles. They either make the 5.53 or 5.51, also sometimes the 7.51 and other variants. But this is kind of a obsolete model, including its diopter sights. But they had some barrels left over. And the thing is, they could not use these Hammerly barrels for domestic sales because of, well, frankly, government regs and red tape and all that. So they were very happy to be able to find them a home on the export market to the USA. And I think that's another reason why the PE90s here have the non-internally threaded barrel. These are both what they call single-piece barrel. The flash hider is machined as part of it. It is hammer forged, 1-in-10 twist for the GP90 63 grain round. But yeah, we mentioned the newer, shorter guns. Let's jump over to those and kind of compare the standard export model, the 5.53P, and the somewhat specialized model from my store, the 5.5307. Meet the PE90 Schwartz. Of course, here's the standard PE90 in gray-green. But in this recent Sand Imports batch, there were, I think, 3 black editions. And this is pretty uncommon. You see 5.50s in black, but not PE90s too often. So that's kind of neat. I mean, over in Switzerland, I'm sure you see them. Probably up in Canada too. But here, we don't. And of course, it's the same gun, but in black. And it also has a black steel lower. Typically, when you see black lowers, they're alloy. Another interesting thing, the serial range. The regular PE90 is a PE and then, numbers. This is not. This is PEESF and then numbers. I don't know. I found that kind of interesting from a collecting and, standpoint. And you just don't see many 21-inch barrel versions like this. And here's the other side of the Schwartz. And on its light bipod. Just thought I'd show you both angles. Of course, it still has the Swiss crest. And like the other stamped lowers, it's marked with the SIG roundel. I don't know, it was just something unique and different. And probably a little more to people's liking overall than the pink and mauve one. But then again, I could be wrong. On the bottom in black, we have the standard SG553P LB. And we have the 553P 07 edition on top. And obviously it's in traditional gray and green. Not too many differences. Both have a 13.6, 13.7 threaded, internally threaded, I should say, barrel, flash hider. There are minor differences in how it's cut. The 07 is a 1 in 10 twist, Swiss mil spec for their GP90 63 grain. This is the export model, so it's a 1 in 7 twist for, well, standard NATO type ammo. Both have a two-way standard gas regulator. Both have the loop on the bottom to support a bayonet lug if you wish. Both have the short gas system, green versus black. Both have steel uppers with the Picatinny rail. This is very much the standard. In fact, Switzerland says that the only people they still do Diopters for at all are Americans. Just one's in black, one's in gray. But of course, the lowers are slightly different. The 07 edition here has the traditional SIG marked, stamped steel welded lower. And the 553LB has the more modern, no SIG mark, machined aluminum alloy lower. Both still take the Swiss 20 and 30 round mags though. Otherwise, they both have the horizontal charging handle so that it doesn't interfere with the optics. And both have a fluted gas piston inside. So really, yeah, the only difference, steel versus alloy, and the color of furniture, and the barrel twist. It's worth noting that the Swiss Army has, in recent years, approved the alloy lower, so chances are they'll start buying them too, because it does save weight, which on a full rifle may not matter too much, but on a light little carbine, certainly can make the difference. And now for the little brother. Again in black, we have the SG553P SB, short barrel. Again with an alloy lower. And up here, we have the 553P SB 07 edition with pretty much the same as the LB. Now, all the SBs will be two-piece barrels. Now, when I say all the SBs, I mean all the 5.52s and 5.53s, the commandos as they're often referred to as. That's because, you know, you're expected maybe to want to run a suppressor or whatnot. Now, the version up here has the 3-prong Rotex flash hider, which I was expecting on the 07. There's a few different styles of Rotex, all the way up to the modern birdcage. But I was a little surprised that the standard 5.53 SBs also came in with the Rotex. That means they're both threaded 14x1 left hand, aka the AK thread pitch. That was originally what SIG, then SAN, now SIG again, used on the 5.52 and 5.53. But in more recent years, most of their guns have started to be threaded 1/2x28 because they started getting away from Rotex devices and using things like Surefire. But it just goes to show you that SIG enjoys surprising us. And flipping them over, yeah, we have the same differences. Steel lower versus the alloy. I will say, when you get to the shorter barrels here, picking these up, yeah, having that alloy is actually quite nice. This is supposed to be a compact, easy to maneuver gun, and it really balances well, so I actually like the alloy lower. Of course, this is all black, 1-in-7 twist. This is traditional gray-green, 1-in-10 twist. And this would not support a bayonet because the barrel is way too short. And again, they have the flip-up backup sights. Here we have a unique configuration, and one that'll probably be among the rarer. And this was not part of the March pre-order that came in May. It did come in May, but these were put up for pre-order back in August of 2020. I think it was around August 20 of 2020. This is a relatively standard SG55x SB. It has an 8.9 cold hammer forged barrel with a 1-in-7 twist. It has standard 1/2x28 threads with a Swiss made A2 type flash hider. It has a standard 2-way gas regulator. It's in the gray, as you see, with green furniture, steel lower. But of course, what makes it unique, not only does it have diopter sights with the folding night sight too, but it comes with a Picatinny rail, 1913 rail to appease Chris Bartacci, welded from the factory. And this is a configuration I don't know that SiG Sauer A.G. Switzerland has ever done before. Now, of course, it's very easy to install the front diopter sight. It's just set into a dovetail. But the rear, not so much. If you have a standard pick rail receiver gun, you can try to find a clamp-on rear diopter. You've seen one on my guns I take occasionally, and they work really well. But they're kind of hard to get a hold of, and yeah, they're not the cheapest in the world. So that's one option you can do if you do the pick rail gun. Now, if you get diopters, which always cost more, they can take a QD pick rail mount on top, which also costs more. So you can kind of have the same shorter pick rail with diopters if you go that route, but you're going to spend quite a bit of money. This version here is neat because you get the diopter not clamped on, but welded on. and you get the Picatinny rail. It's kind of interesting because it's kind of scalloped in the middle to save on weight and also to rise it up just a bit to better work with these diopter sights. So it is a bit of a custom part. Now they did not do a 553P LB, just the SB. And again, there were only 10 of these. So even though they were pre-ordered last August because of the COOF, they were supposed to be in December of 2020. Well, they ended up coming in May of 2021. Unfortunately, a half-year delay is pretty par for the course for SIG. But even if they're late, they always do deliver. And I think this will be one that a lot of people will look forward to because it does kind of give you the best of both worlds. And actually, things got a lot better in October, too. Perhaps because the 553 pick rail and diopter sold out so quickly, even though it did cost a little more than the standard diopter version in October, JDI Sand Imports announced pre-orders would be taken for this gun, the SG55x, and this is the SB variant, which was actually the original version created all the way back in the 1980s for Swiss military trials, at that time called a headquarters or command staff carbine. It has a 14.3-inch cold hammer forged barrel. I'm presuming this one is a 1 in 7, but it could be a 1 in 10, but I'm going to think 1 in 7. This has an integral flash hider, and it's internally threaded for a blank fire device. It has the loop, of course, under the gas block, but it's far too short to mount a bayonet. And if you'll notice, the regulator here on the 553 is smooth on the end. On the 551, it has the prongs there, like on a 550. That just has to do with barrel length. Otherwise, it's the same. It has the front diopter and welded with diopter rear. And this was a version that many people were hoping they would do. Still a steel lower, by the way. This is the intermediate length gas system. It's kind of interesting because the 553 SB comes out to about the front sight of the 551 LB. So the overall difference in length is only a couple of inches. And as I've said in many videos, in terms of shooting, the 551 is kind of my favorite because it's the best of both worlds. And with that, there's actually more good news and a little bit of not so good news with how these 551s came in. First, the good news. Whereas the 553 was only done in the SB, for the pick rail and diopter 551, they would do both the SB and the LB. The LB, of course, having the 17.8-inch barrel, still with a fixed flash hider. But the LB can do a grenade. It can also mount a bayonet. And it's over that magical 16-inch number, meaning, as far as the NFA is concerned, you can attach a buttstock legally. So that's good. And even better news, whereas there were only 10 SBs in October of 2020, it was announced that there would be 25 LBs and 25 SBs, so a total of 50 in this unique configuration. Now for the not so good news, the bad news. Even though 25 and 25 were ordered, because this was a bit of a rush job, SIG only shipped 20 SB, which was okay because that was the number JDI pre-sold, and 20 LB, which was not okay because all 25 had been pre-sold. This left at a dilemma, but such is life when you're rushing things. Also, you might have noticed the finish on this is a little more matte. And that's because, again, it was a rush job. SIG did give these the standard phosphate finish, which is kind of a neat gray-green, or so I'm told. But they didn't do what they called sealing it, which is adding that Urufom or whatever, the Ufi paint finish. So you can do that yourself. Obviously, you're not going to have the exact same finish, but you could Cerakote, Duracoat, what have you. And as far as I know, you can just kind of leave it as is, too. I mean, it is a phosphate finish, which is mostly what guns have anyway. If I'm wrong, though, correct me, because I'm not 100% sure. Also, because of all this, you'll notice it doesn't have the rubber dust cover, but they did ship it. I just knocked it over. One sec. They did ship it with the rubber and the required rivets. That's because you would not install these until you've sealed it and given it its paint finish. You can't install this and then paint it. That would not work out so great. So JDI, because this was unexpected, is offering to either install the rubber for you and just kind of rock it with a phosphate finish, or ship it uninstalled as it here so you can get it finished out. One other thing I thought was kind of interesting, this has the upswept charging handle instead of the perfectly horizontal style seen on the 5.53. Just thought I would point that out. So technically there were no 5.51s in the March pre-order. Again, these were all from a much earlier pre-order from back in October of 2020. In recent times, even though the 5.51 SB was the original JDI import, in recent times we've had very few 5.51s. It's mostly been 5.53s, even the 5.52s, and of course the 5.50s and PE90s. So it is nice to see a few new 5.51s, even if the number was less than originally hoped for. Other calibers were represented in the batch as well. And here we have the SG55x This is the version chambered for 7.62x39, with the R in the name standing for Russian. And it feeds from AK mags. It comes with one Magpul mag in a sealed bag, so I didn't want to open it up. But to show you that steel mags will fit, I put one in. In the past, we've tried this with multiple mags and types and things, and it generally works. The mag well's not quite AK spec because of the design of the gun, so some drums and things may not fit. Some mags with real wide sides, like say waffle mags, may not fit, but WBP mags fit, steel mags fit from different countries, Magpuls obviously fit, but Bakelites will fit. That was kind of the idea when Russia initially contracted with Switzerland to design and build the gun for them. They wanted to be able to use their old AK mags. To that end, we don't have a bolt hold open. See? We do have the ambidextrous safety. This is on an alloy lower. I wanted to show you this too because this is an example of the two-piece LB. With the flash hider attached, it's about 13.5 inches. With it unscrewed, it's 11.9. It does have the bulge for the grenade. It has the loop for the bayonet lug. This is on 5/8 by 24 threads, I do believe. And it's a neat, kind of unique flash hider that is kind of A1 style, but with larger cuts. Very, very Swiss style, frankly. And it has your typical folding front and rear sights as such. And it's based on the 5.53 short gas system. 5.53Rs have come in via JDI before, but in relatively limited numbers, under 200. I think it's about 150, 160 in the country, so it's nice to see more. And they're essentially the same configuration, black alloy, except the original guns had green handguards and pistol grip. This obviously is all black. It still has the Picatinny rail on top. Also of note, it has a two-way gas regulator. Just letting you know. So minor differences. I say this because a couple of people have asked me if I swapped the furniture on these that I photographed, and nope, they came in black this time. Also in this batch was a very similar gun, the 5.53-300, but I don't have one of those at the moment to show you. I've had them in the past. It's also a two-piece LB, but it's a thicker barrel. I guess to handle the extra pressure they presume might come out of 300 blackout. But in other ways, it's very similar, and it feeds from standard Swiss 5.50, 5.51, 5.53, 20 and 30 round magazines. Again, I just sent my last one to James Reeves, so I'm sure he'll do multiple videos on it. I'm sure he can make better use of it than I do, because I don't own a 30 caliber rifle suppressor, at least not at the moment. Yeah, the 5.53R has honestly been the surprise hit of the summer. These are in larger demand than I originally anticipated, and they have a good reputation. I think it's because they fire an ammunition that's still available for a reasonable price. I just picked up a case of 7.62 by 39 from Kavar, and it was under $300 for 1,000 retail. Also, these use affordable and easy to find AK mags. Most anyone has these if they have the caliber, so they don't have to worry about buying extra mags like they would for the 5.51, 5.53, or for our next gun, which does take its own proprietary mags. So let's upscale to that. There were some SAPRs, Swiss Arms Precision Rifles, SG55x in the batch. In fact, you saw a couple of rounds put through this one during the Memorial Day video. This time, we didn't get any 14 inches. We got 16 and 20 heavy barrel. And this is a unique enough gun that I'm working on a full SAPR video, so stay tuned for that. I just wanted to give acknowledgement that there were both 16-inch carbines and 20-inch rifles in the batch. In the USA, the 16-inch is called the SB, and the 20-inch is called the LB. In Switzerland, the 16-inch is technically considered an LB because the SBs are the 13 and the 14, but I just wanted to clarify that. And let's kind of end where we started, looking back at the full-length rifles. Very briefly, and I've mentioned this in quite a few other videos, but just comparing my older SIG production gun from the very late 80s, potentially very early 90s. It's hard to date these precisely, but this is a legitimate PE90. To the current production ones, the quality, the standards are the same. The barrels are the same quality, cold hammer forged. There have been a few subcontractors over the years that made the blanks, including Hammerly and Waffenburn. Also, SIG has made them in-house, and SIG did all final finishing, fitting, and testing regardless. Swiss bayonet lug, Same diopter sights. The furniture has changed a bit. The way it has cutouts and vents. Honestly, I would say the polymer has improved slightly over time, which is kind of how polymer technology works in the first place. Stamped receivers, stamped and welded, still the same. My point, real briefly, is they're the same quality guns. I've handled a lot of these. I've handled a good number of earlier, say, export 550-1s and PE90s, and I don't notice any quality difference whatsoever. It's the same factory in Neuhausen, even if it's changed its name a couple of times. What factory hasn't? Almost every American gun manufacturer has changed their name a little bit, and most every foreign factory too. It's just kind of what happens over time. And with that, let's move on to probably the rarest gun that came in May of 2021. That's right. The one I teased you with. The Barbie pink, bubblegum pink, passion pink, and a few other things I probably shouldn't repeat on YouTube. With the pinkish purple, I don't know, mauve maybe, furniture. You might hate it, but this will probably be one of the rarest of the batch of over 600 that JDI imported. That's because it really wasn't even supposed to come in. Dave requested that SIG ship them any semi-automatics that were approved for import and legal for ownership here. And so they really kind of cleaned house, shipping everything. That's why the initial order was actually a little larger than expected. So, the deal with these pink ones, it seems absurd to us. Most Americans would want the gray and green, maybe the all-black Schwartz. But in Switzerland, this is a pretty bog standard gun. In the US, a bog standard gun would be an AR-15. And you see pink AR-15s in every other flavor under the sun. And the same as in Switzerland. When something is standard, you want to have something a little unique and different. Maybe you're a woman, maybe you're a man that is very confident in himself and wants to rock a pink gun. Hey, no judgments. SIG made these for the Swiss commercial domestic market as a limited run item, just to be different and I think to have some fun. Now, a total of 6 pink rifles, well, rifle length pistols, I should say, came in. 2 were marked PE90. And these had the standard black furniture. But 4 were marked 550. And these have this furniture. Very unique custom furniture set. So there's only 4 pink guns with matching, or at least basically matching. I mean, you're matching polymer to metal, so it's never going to be exact, but, you know, appropriate furniture. And yes, appropriate buttstocks are ordered from Switzerland. They will be in later this summer because this is, again, a custom job. So yeah, love it or hate it, there's only going to be 4 people that own an all pink gun. Now the barrel, because it's not painted, it's just phosphate, will remain this color. But you know, your gas block, your upper, your lower, even the mag kind of matches. Yeah, I would honestly say this is one of the rarest guns to ever come in, even rarer than the desirable Alpine. And it is unique. No one's going to ignore it. If you pull this out, you will get a comment. I promise. And now for some final thoughts. When many of us say that Dave has done a service to the import community, the firearms collecting community, the Swiss collecting community, this isn't an overstatement, and this isn't people trying to curry favor. It's just true. Before Dave, we had the pre-ban imports. We had a few from the 90s, like the DSAs and the capital guns. And there were some automatics sold to police departments, like the 5.51 Schwartz that Mike Ott picked up, and the 5.52s that Midwest sold. But that was basically it. The SIG USA guns, the 5.56, the 5.51A1, different critters. Anyway, of course, it was M plus M, Colorado Gun Sales, a different mic. They first got them to bring in 5.53 pistols, but these were pretty much just one, or well, two variants, the pick rail and Diopter, both with 8.9-inch barrel. This was going really well, and these were good guns, but unfortunately SiG Sauer USA kind of nosed in because M plus M didn't have an watertight, airtight agreement with San Switzerland. So yeah, SIG USA kind of mucked that up. They came in and then they stopped imports, basically. Learning from this, JDI was able to lawyer up and get the exclusive, something they hold to this day. And this really has protected them from interference. And I decided to end with this gun because this is kind of where it began, at least one like it. The first batch, I think it was 50, that they brought in were SG55x SBs. They were all black with an alloy lower. He would then do a batch of 5.51 LBs, again all black, with a longer barrel, and do several custom runs of 5.53s, even having an order form where you could custom assemble, custom configure a 5.53 to your liking. But not just stopping there, he pushed the envelope. Before this, the 5.50 was not able to be imported, but working with the ATF and again kind of lawyering up in the right way, he was able to get approval for the 5.50 and also even ones marked PE90, which required a whole separate import. Likewise, when he did that run of 5.52s, only like 54, he again had to get new approval because that exact name, 5.52P, was not on the books. And moving from there, we have the 7.51 SAPR, 5.53 300 blackout, 5.53R, 7.62x39, and obviously towards the end he was working on the 6.5 Creedmoor. He kept pushing the envelope to get more stuff in. And even at the end, his worries mounted about upcoming changes with the new director of the ATF going through confirmation. He really pressured SIG Switzerland to deliver as much as they could in May, and we talked about that in the interview video, and they followed through. They actually delivered more guns, technically speaking, than originally anticipated. I guess, again, though, all Form 6s were appropriately done. And this is a good example of it because he even had them deliver guns that weren't 100% finished, and to get Switzerland to ship guns that aren't 100% finished is quite something. They are perfectionists, after all. But regardless, we got them safe and sound before any laws change. If the laws do not change, great. We have more Swiss guns for the market. And some rare ones like you've seen in this video besides. And some unique configurations like this one with the pick rail and welded Diopters. This config, SIG has had in their catalog for ages, but have made very, very few of. So this is a pretty neat run for JDI, and probably my favorite, personally, of this particular batch, including having the SB barrel length. I just think it's kind of a neat configuration. Of course, Dave has made a good bit of money for himself. Don't get me wrong. But he also put up with a lot of headaches, a lot of sleepless nights, and went a lot of familial things to make this happen. Trust me, he earned his money. He really did. Imports are a pain in the ass and a headache and a pain everywhere else. People, they do it for the love of it. The money's nice, but he wanted to see these guns in the country. He, and myself included both, started off as owners, as fans, and wanting to bring what we like to other people. And that's really what it's all about, or should be all about, especially with these kind of higher end boutique imports. We don't know if they're over, if that's it. You know, as the old saying goes, it's not over till someone sings. But we do know that these made it in. If more come, great. No one's going to be crying if more are able to make it over. And if not, over the last 5 years, JDI has brought over hundreds of guns and really increased the number of SG55x's and definitely the variety of 55x's available in the United States. And these guns are built to last. These are going to be circulating through the market years, decades, probably even a century to come. And so that's why we do owe Dave something, because he contributed to the enrichment of the American civilian shooting, collecting, what have you, gun market. And if in the future, 50 years from now, some American company wants to try to reverse engineer a PE90 or a 5.51 or a 5.52, they can probably find one of Dave's imports to use as a pattern. It's always easier to do it that way. So there you go, folks. Kind of a rundown of the guns we saw in this batch. So, what's your favorite? What do you think? Yeah, let's talk about it in the comments. As always, if you could, like, share, and subscribe. And if you'd like to help support the channel, please check out the link to the Patreon page. This is Misha, and I'll catch you very soon next time.